Who are these people? Not Casella's first name in Bethlehem. 85 and 40. Fort Lee. Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine what would happen. Yeah. They were in Fixville. They were in Fixville. Oh, okay. You can hike up and down this old wood road. If you go down the wood road, you can turn left before you hit the gate at the bottom. You hike into the house.
December 20th at 6:07. We're going to go ahead and get started this evening. First on the agenda tonight, we have public input. Public input. And for those of you, since we have a variety of new folks in the audience, which is great, and on Zoom as well. For people to hear on Zoom, we need to use the podium because the microphone picks up people speaking at that speaker on the podium. And if we speak out in the audience, people on Zoom can't hear. So we're asking that folks use the podium when addressing the board or through conversation. And also nice that we have a lot of new folks in the room. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
This public input is not about the trucking route. This
Correct.
is regular public input.
Yeah, so this is just regular public input. Mr. Roden.
I'm Dick Roby, and I do live in Bethlehem. I had a tough time getting in here tonight. There were people who did not live in Bethlehem, taking their picture on the front step. It's kind of neat.
I can't hear you.
Well, it sounds to me like you should go home and listen. I'm up here for clarification. If you want to have a political sign, you have to be so many feet from the front door. I want to get this clarified. We've got a guy campaigning right here in the hall. How far is that going to go?
That's a good question.
You have to be in the corral out there on election day, and you cannot be. That's the reasoning for it. So here we got a man sitting here with a sign. Maybe I'd like to go and get a sign, but I don't think that's the way it should be. Here.
We did think about that before when we were establishing sort of ground rules for today.
I'll just put this down. How's that? It's fine with me.
I don't think we intended to keep, we talked about whether or not we needed to keep people to the electioneering areas and decided against it all the way up in the law. But it was like, maybe not necessary, I don't remember. Because it wasn't an election, so the electioneering rules don't expressly apply.
It's not an election, again, it's a public forum. It's not even a public hearing because it wasn't noticed as a public hearing.
Yep.
Did we get an answer?
So it wasn't a public, so we're not, this is an election, so the election rules don't
I think you're
apply.
splitting words, but that's fine. He agreed to put it down, that's fine with me. But you should get it cleared up. If it's bad at election time, it's no good at a time like this when there's a lot of strong feelings over this issue out here. Just as strong as elections, to me.
I know that there's actually laws about it. You can't have any electioneering within the town building. I don't know if it's confined to certain dates around the election, but I do know that there are laws about it.
But this is not an election. This is just a public forum to gather information that we can forward to state officials if we so wish. I mean, there's no voting. There's no election going on here.
But it's still a town building.
Yeah, but the other issues that I think may have come up originally was also that, as we've seen with other attempts to curtail speech in
here now, is there anybody who is unable to get into the building outside currently because of unable to make it in because of people outside?
There's nobody outside
Okay.
when I came in.
When I came in, there was no one in front.
There were people in front when I came in, but I just said, excuse me, and took their phone.
So I don't know, Mr. Roby, if we can give you an answer on it. It seems like we're all in here now, and the ones that was in the room have voluntarily been
I think
lowered.
this man here answered the question myself. He said he put the sign down. I assume he's a gentleman. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We just have to find out what the wheel is. Doesn't have to be tonight, but it has to be over this one particular sign, because it's here.
Well, I don't think that's an answer we're gonna have tonight, but for future meetings like this, that is something that we will we'll look into legal counsel and get a more clarified answer when these situations arise again.
I think primary Lou probably even has the answer to that
Yeah.
as the moderator. But it is clarification you should have,
Yeah.
because it definitely
Yeah.
is illegal in some,
Just in the meantime, thank you for putting the sign down.
Yeah.
yeah.
Other public input this evening. I'm taking that. If anybody else sees anything on Zoom, let me know. So next on the agenda, we have our public information gathering on proposed trucking route for the proposed Dalton landfill. So as a board, we discussed this, and Chris has a statement here in a moment. But as a board, we discussed this as an opportunity to gather input from the community, the Bethlehem community, about the proposed truck routes for the proposed Dalton landfill. We're asking tonight that folks keep to a 3-minute time limit, because there are a lot of folks in the audience. One statement per speaker. We're asking for Bethlehem residents and taxpayers only. In that if a point has already been made, feel free to agree with it, but to not reiterate it if you can, just so we're not being redundant. We also have a letter or two that I will read out loud during this. And we are also accepting letters as well. I see that Tim put up email address to email those to. So if you are unable to get your comment in this evening or after this meeting, if you have comments that you want to submit to the board, submitting them at admin@bethlehemnewhampshire.org is the best way to do that.
Okay. Excuse me. The idea for this forum basically came from the Selectboard's interest in hearing what residents think about the plan to route some of the trucks for the proposed Dalton landfill along US 203 and then 116 later. So the board's seeking comment on truck traffic, not whether or not the landfill is a good thing or a bad thing, or actually the history of Casella in Bethlehem. The idea was that those comments could be considered, and then the board, if it wished, could share them with state officials. I talked to an official from the Department of Environmental Services, and she said that basically DES cannot control truck traffic, so that's not really a factor. But she also noted that concerns of residents, which could include truck traffic, would be considered as the department weighs how much of a public benefit there would be to a new landfill. So then the question is, how much traffic would there be? According to an August 27th letter from Casella, quote, a small portion of the overall landfill traffic, close quote, will be going up I-91 and then down I-93 getting off at exit 40. The trucks will then continue down Main Street to Twin before going north on Route 3 and picking up 116. That letter says peak hourly traffic is expected to be in the range of about 1 truck per hour in each direction. So using my excellent math skills, we are looking at 2 trucks per hour. The application asks for operation from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays and some activity on Saturdays. Trucks can enter the landfill at 6 a.m. So there's the possibility of some trucks going through town before that. This afternoon I talked to John Gay, who's a Casella engineer, and he said Casella is asking to operate until 6 p.m. So that suggests as many as 24 trucks a day. But Mr. Gay also said it's likely that Casella would not accept any incoming trucks after 3 p.m. So 9 hours, we'd be looking at maybe 18 trucks. I didn't see anything in the application that would guarantee the number of trucks would not increase. And of course, the impact along 116 will be much, much greater for those residents because that's where all of the trucks will be going. In one filing, excuse me, in one filing, Casella estimated 102 loads a day total to the new proposed landfill. So I guess we can double that since the trucks won't be staying there. That's really pretty much the short version. If you have questions or comments about how Casella made its routing decision, I mean, we can't answer those, but we are interested in what everyone thinks.
We'd like to open this up to comments from Bethlehem residents, Bethlehem taxpayers. And again, if you are here in the audience, please use the podium so we can hear and so folks on Zoom can hear. And we do have a lot of folks, I'll keep my eye on the Zoom board. So what would be helpful if you use the raise hand function on Zoom, that'd be much easier. So I can see and the board can see who has comments there. So I'll go back and forth. I'll go if anybody has comments here, then Zoom. Does anybody have comments
Can
here?
I just add two things?
Go for
I'm
it.
gonna be the bad guy holding people to 3 minutes, so we are gonna hold you to 3 minutes, and that's people only speak once.
Yep.
So just wanna also say how the rules out there.
Comment from the audience. Yeah, feel free. And yeah, again, name and address.
Hi, I'm Randy Smith from 818 Bethlehem, Whitefield Road in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. And my concern is about the amount of traffic that will be increasing on 116. I'll be directly impacted by that. I do live on 116, which is Whitefield Road, and the amount of traffic that will be increasing on there. Like you said, it's 102, but it's basically double. It'd be 200 plus trucks, plus there's other, I don't think all of the trucks were calculated in that as far as the activity going in and out of the landfill that day. To include all the logging trucks that are already existing on there and regular traffic, be increasing during that period of time. If you had 200 over an 8-hour period, that's 25 trucks an hour up and down 116. Not to mention the trucks that will be going through on 302 through Bethlehem. My concern is that the speed that the traffic is on that road is out of control. It's a 55 or 50 mile an hour speed limit, and no one does that. And there's continual accidents, and adding that increased traffic on is just going to make it more dangerous for 116. And Bethlehem will be directly impacted by that because they'll be responding with emergency services. And that's basically my major concern, sticking to the traffic situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck Oates, Longfellow Drive, Bethlehem. It seems to me that this represents a complete reversal of kinds of dollars and effort that have gone into promoting and enhancing Bethlehem as a destination for shopping, entertainment, tourism generally. We've got at least 8 pedestrian priority crosswalks, which people use and expect traffic to stop. And we have parking and businesses located on both sides of the road downtown, with people going across the Colonial, people going from parking at the basketball courts to Reckless, to Mountain Wind, to Cold Mountain. There's just a lot of pedestrian traffic in the downtown area, and adding this number of trucks and having observed those trucks on both Route 3, Trudeau Road, and the ones that have sometimes come through town, they do not adhere to a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and they frequently don't respect the pedestrian priority on the crosswalks. Well, I think it's a terrible idea. I feel for the people on Route 116, as Randy had just spoken, that the number of trucks there is potentially substantially higher and represent noise, smell. It's just a bad idea. Enough said.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah. Anybody here in the audience? Yes, come. Go ahead.
Hello, Catherine Dargis, 1083 Prospect Street. The biggest thing I see as a problem is while this is all this messing around about what's going to happen that is not the dump itself, but is related to the dump, like what's going to happen with traffic and economic development is going in Bethlehem is going to suffer because there are going to be people who do not want to put money into anything if they could wind up having a major road or a truck staging area with trucks showing up at 5 o'clock in the morning and sitting there for an hour idling until they're ready to go. And so I think we have to see what we can do to get the powers that be to speed this along and give us some answers, you know, and I don't know if DOT gets involved in it too, or it's just DES, but we need some honest answers, and I don't think we can trust, maybe I'm terribly wrong about this, but I don't think we can trust Casella to have such a low limit each day on the number of trucks that will be coming through. They seem to underestimate a lot of things, like the height of the Part 6 out in at the Bethlehem landfill. The other thing I wanted to talk about for a little bit is Long Hill. We're going to have trucks coming up Long Hill and going down Long Hill. And we all know what happens at Long Hill. We've seen the vehicles lying on their sides on the golf course and things like that during the winter when it gets slippery and stuff. And is Casella aware of that, and do they realize that if a leachate truck comes loose and goes flying down there and falls over, we've got a major problem? And just last year, I forget what it was that was lying there, ruining the golf course a little bit. But I guess those are my two things. And I guess, yeah. Yeah, that'll do it.
Great. Thank you, Pat.
Yep.
Fred Apples.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for letting me. I'm going to just read the comments. My name's Fred Apple. I've been a Bethlehem taxpayer directly since the 1950s. My grandparents owned a home on Jefferson Street. My parents took it over, and now I'm a direct taxpayer here since 2015 with property on Main Street and on Belabachi Road. I 100% endorse the words of Elliot Wessler that was written in the Littleton Courier on December 15th. And my comments are about Save Bethlehem's Main Street article. It so well states and reflects the beauty and the charm of the town of Bethlehem, why my 2 generations ago moved here. And it represents why we live in this community and why we left big cities to support this special town. Why the Selectboard, now it's saying they are, would support the Casella application to haul garbage and not voice strongly through our town and avoid that is beyond comprehension to me, but I know big business often controls things. The votes required to decide not to support this, I'm not sure if there isn't even a vote, to not support Casella driving down Main Street, is the words I just heard from other people, was why the next generation of, like my children, will keep coming here. And for safety, as we've heard of all that traffic, underestimated likely by Casella. And we look towards Bethlehem's future growth, doesn't include these trucks driving down it. I think we all should strive for this to avoid this type of increased hauling trash down our Main Street. So I thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I wish everyone a happy holiday and a happy new year, and I hope this does not happen.
Thank you. Right here in the audience. Yeah, in the back. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Dalton. Along with my lovely lady love, we own Reckless Brewing, as well as live here in town. I've lived in town since 2004. And as you all know, this town is in the process of going through an amazing transformation that I've seen just since I've lived here. And that is one of the destination area. There's absolutely no doubt. I mean, this town is flooded with people during, you know, the high tourism months. And one of the problems we've always had in this town are trucks going through it. There's no question that even the trucks that currently go through this town are a problem. They're very loud. They disrupt traffic. They're dangerous. They go, even though they're going a speed limit, it seems like they're going faster than they actually are. If you add, I guess the estimation is 30 or 40 trucks a day to that, it's just going to make the problem that much worse. Not only that, but they're dump trucks, and they smell, and whether, you know, they try awful hard to keep all that stuff on the trucks, but they inevitably fly off. We have what, over 100 seats outside right now that we seat in the summertime at Reckless Brewing, and a truck going by that is smelly and loud is going to be a definite issue for us. There's just no question about it. It might even be one of those things where a person is sitting there enjoying a beer and lunch and saying, this is beautiful, but for the truck, next time I'm going to go to Conway or something. I have no idea. But I wouldn't like it. I'll put on another hat, and that's the one of Bethlehem Trails Association. Bethlehem Trails Association is our mountain bike group, and we've been working real hard to bring a great network of trails to this area, and it's happening, and there's a lot of people coming here because of that. And again, thank you for mentioning economic development, because we need to transform the way we make money in this town in regard to the town. And the economic development that we've started in regard to the way the town makes money is absolutely fantastic. There's new landowners, there's new homes going up because they like this area. It feels good. The trails that we're building, by the time we're done, we're going to be crossing 302 in about 3 or 4 different places. We're going to have riders crossing 302. You know, we'll put signs up and we'll do our due diligence to keep everybody safe, but add another 30 or 40 trucks coming through who the drivers just want to get to the place they need to leave their load and then go home. They're going to have very little care about what we're doing here. Sorry. So, mountain biking, economic development, I think it's a horrible idea to let these people run their trucks through town. Thank you. Zoom? Anybody on Zoom?
Cheryl, go ahead, please.
Unmute Cheryl.
I'm unmuted.
There you go.
I have been doing annual roadside cleanups in Bethlehem since 2007. And I hear from people who have done a lot of cleaning up on Route 3, and they tell me that it's always a problem there because I think as Ian mentioned, the stuff flying off the trucks. So, you know, are we going to have that on Main Street in Bethlehem? I mean, I agree with what everybody else has said, but this is also a potential trash issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Martin?
Hi, Martin Blovick, Share Down the Road. I have to say, I agree with a lot of what was said tonight about traffic going through Main Street. The one thing I'd like to bring up to the board is when you decide to write a letter, whatever's in the letter, check the numbers again, the number of trucks. You know, we've heard 30 trucks, now we're at 30, 40 trucks, and with 200 trucks, going through town back and forth. So I think it's important to get the numbers right, to represent what you're trying to say to DES, just so that the town sounds credible here. At the same time, I want to remind everyone in town, especially residents of 116 and visitors here from Dalton, that Bethlehem's hosting a landfill on Trudeau Road that doesn't go through town at all. Trucks that go through Trudeau Road exit on exit 35, I think, go on Route 3, make a left on Trudeau Road. Nobody sees the trucks. They go to landfill. There's plenty of room for expansion there. And I think if we want to avoid this traffic going through 302 through town, through Route 3, through Route 116, I think we should do whatever we can to keep that landfill in Bethlehem and have it expand. And I know that the town has voted twice, once in 2017, once in 2018. We don't have to rehash that at this time, but I sincerely hope that we get some support from your friends from Dalton, that we keep that Bethlehem here. I know that some of that opposition has nicely freelanced that opposition to Dalton now, and it's now called Save the North Country. Again, this is not the forum to discuss that, but if we want to avoid traffic on 116, on Route 3, on Route 302, Trudeau Road is the place to keep the landfill. It promotes economic development from town. Doesn't impact the main street. It doesn't impact reckless. It doesn't impact mountain biking routes. Those are my two things. But when you do write the letter, check the numbers so that it doesn't turn into something that it's really not. What if it's 10 trucks per day, 20 trucks round trip? It's completely different than saying that it's 40, 50, or 100, or whatever it is. So that's just my advice. Thank you.
If I may jump in, you're absolutely right about having the correct numbers. The numbers that I cited earlier this evening are from the Casella report to DES and to DOT, and I double-checked them with John Gay, who you know as well as the rest of us do, as a Casella engineer. But you're right, we have the right number. The numbers we have now, the ones I was using, are Casellas.
Can I go back on just for a second? 30 seconds left? No, all I'm saying, Chris, is from the audience we've heard now 30, 40 trucks, and now, if somebody says 100 trucks, I just want to make sure that you don't just put that in, stick the numbers that you have, double check them, whatever it is at the end of the day that goes in the application. And that's it. But I do agree that, if we can avoid having traffic in town, let's keep the landfill on Trudeau Road. There's no traffic on 302. There's no traffic on 116. There's no traffic through Whitefield. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Thank you for doing a good job. Thank you, Mark.
Anybody on Zoom? Julie. Julie, you're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Very good. I'd like to follow up on what Martin just said and agree with him that it's really important to get an accurate number. And I'd like to go a step further and say we're not looking just at now, we're looking at the future as well. And I well remember a day, it was not much more than 10 years ago, where we were kind of shocked that the landfill had taken something like 140,000 tons a year. It was so much more than it had been just a decade before that. And if you look back at the numbers, with the exception only of the past few years when the tonnage has been pulled back because they were running out of space and they had to resubmit their permit application and all that stuff, the tonnage grows and grows and grows. So back in like 2015 or 16, when they got the stage 5 permit, they had said that was for 280,000 tons a year, which was more than double what it's been just before. So I'd urge the board to look not just at the traffic that's estimated for the present, but to extrapolate what we might see in the future as well, if that rate of growth continues. And I'd also like to point out that the last permit, and I'm not talking stage 6 because we're barely into it, but the stage 5 permit estimated 280,000 tons a year. And if you actually average out what they took in stage 5, it was more like, I think it was about 320, give or take, and as high as 433,000 tons 1 year on a permit that, you know, again, that's the way New Hampshire works, they're allowed to go over. So it could be a decent percentage higher than what they're actually saying. It will be what they're estimating, 460,000 tons a year, according to whatever the number is, 480, 460, could well be 15 to 20% higher each year, depending on how their compaction rates come in and things like that. There's no ceiling that DEF puts on. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
For the record, can we identify who Julie
Oh,
is?
Julie Seeley.
I thought so, but.
Anybody here in the audience? Go ahead.
I'm Brian Cook. I live on 3768 Main Street. Just regarding traffic down Main Street, it's just a bad idea. You know, the town is in an economic resurgence, and we certainly want to encourage that. I don't know how much influence the town really has with this letter, but you know, just with the current NCES Landfill on Trudeau Road, the trucks that are going there coming down from the north they're not coming to Main Street and going down Trudeau Road that way. They're going down 93, coming up Route 3, going into the landfill. I don't really understand why that option is not available for this situation. You know, I almost feel like the Main Street option, it might save Casella a few bucks in fuel, but it also is like a punch in the face for Bethlehem with just our history. So I would suggest writing this letter to propose this alternative route, the route that they're currently using for NCES as the way to get to Dalton, if Dalton ends up happening. But certainly want to write it in a way to discourage any traffic on Main Street with these trash haulers. And that's what I have to say.
Rita.
You have to unmute, Rita. You have to unmute, Rita.
Rita, unmute.
Here we go.
There you go, Rita.
Thank you, John.
That was my unmuter. The Casella Waste Company Incorporated is a multi-billion-dollar business with an active landfill in Bethlehem for decades. It is adjacent to the White Mountain National Forest, right next to it. Sits on the banks of the Ammonoosuc River, where trout pools are stocked for sports fishing. Around midnight last September, 2 trash trucks entered a state highway road, crashed, and a young driver was tragically killed. This is separate from what's going on here. Bethlehem police and others raced to the scene, and the tragedy of the loss still reverberates. It has nothing to do with Casella, but I want to make a point. Back in Bethlehem, a beautiful mountain town on Interstate Highway Route 302, the town's main street, a chain of huge trucks, vans, carriers, and giant vans heading west on Route 302 Main Street came to a dead stop one day last fall, bumper to bumper, and sat idling as engines chugged, roared, and a line of trucks being rerouted to Bethlehem grew endless and came to a dead stop in the very center of the Bethlehem village. Engine fumes and choking odors began to cloud the air. Crossing Bethlehem's main street, a state highway, became impossible. Is that what we want for any part, any town? Entrance to Bethlehem Bethlehem's Heritage Society shop, I'm a member, and library just across the street could not be reached because the very bumper-to-bumper traffic blocked access to the quiet little town, and it really was bumper-to-bumper. You couldn't cross the street. If you were on one side, you couldn't get to the other side because the trucks were all bumping up against each other. You couldn't climb it. There's the little town building that sold books, postcards, souvenirs. That's the Heritage Society, to which many of us belong. And souvenirs for sale by the Heritage Society offered friendly travel and sightseeing advice. People couldn't get to that. And had a display of artifacts from Bethlehem's founding days in the 1700s. No, I wasn't there at the time. There is a history here. And for historians, it was a Harvard professor, Louis Agassiz, who, despite denials by his colleagues many a century or so ago, proved that the ancient glaciers had indeed carved Bethlehem's mountain, now named Agassiz after him in his honor, even though his fellow Harvard members didn't agree at the time, but he proved himself. So who would want to train Bethlehem's finest assets of discovery, science, beautiful mountain views, and trails for an endless line of Casella's odorous, roaring garbage trucks, idling smack in the middle of a village that boasts shops, a theater, tennis courts, etc. Bethlehem and Dalton, and the heart of the white.
Rita, it's 3 minutes. We've stopped other people at 3 minutes as well. We're asking everybody to keep their comments to 3 minutes.
We're over. Yeah, we're over 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anybody here in the audience? Sure.
I'm still Dick Roby.
Still there?
Dick Roby. And I came tonight because a lot of people have lived through this for 40 years and over. An awful lot of people. And I think not many here, and I'll be careful how I say it, not many here have loved Bethlehem's Main Street longer than I have. But I think Save Bethlehem Main Street, that becomes another part of the landfill issue here. We found a new subject to kind of beat up on. If anybody buys themselves a truck, they're going to spend $500,000 to buy a tractor, minimum. And then they're going to buy a box to go behind it. And it looks like, if you get on Facebook, it looks like the landfill is going to say, hey, take the worst road to Bethlehem to get there. In the late 70s, United Parcel, they did a survey to see where the center of their delivery area was. It was Bethlehem. But they chose Twin Mountain because you did not have to come up Long Hill. You did not have to fill that thing up and chug up Long Hill. And these people that have trucks now with sleepers and $1 million truck, they're going to figure that out. You're not going to see a prediction, call it whatever you want. You're not going to see a steady stream of trucks going through this town. But if you look on Facebook, it sounds like we ought to get out there now and cross the street because they're coming. And they may. But I don't think so. I think it's just another way to fight it. They say another 5 years to the landfill. We've heard that a long time. 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. And they're still there. I'm not talking about that issue. I'm just saying I don't think this is going to result in that many trucks going through Bethlehem steady. Thank you.
Any folks on Zoom? Is that Chris DuPont?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Thank you for your time. I'm a property owner at 824 Whitefield Road. right next to, adjacent to Randy Smith at 818 Whitefield Road. We've had property there for over 10 years, and we are directly across from Chick Sand and Gravel, and there has been a fatal accident, a head-on collision. Several vehicles that have left the lane of travel and ended up in our woods. It is quite the treacherous stretch of 116. Numerous accidents, the speeds, again, reiterating with what Randy Smith stated, estimated at 60 to 70 miles an hour. I'm a police officer in a different state. I've been employed for 24 years. The traffic is out of control. It is not monitored by law enforcement, whether it's Bethlehem or the New Hampshire State Police. And a lot of the accidents are within 50 to 100, maybe a couple hundred feet of the entrance to Chick Sand and Gravel, where they're going to propose to increase the amount of traffic in that entrance and redo that whole area. We also own another piece of land right across from Wing Road, which we intend to develop. So we have a great concern with the amount of traffic, the lack of awareness, I would say, by the state police, lack of enforcement, and when you increase the amount of traffic with the large trucks, it's a recipe for disaster. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time and happy holidays.
Thank you. I'm going to read what's here in front of me. Sue Greenlaw sent in a letter, so I'm going to read that aloud. Sue Greenlaw is the principal at Bethlehem Elementary School. To whom it may concern, as the principal at Bethlehem Elementary School, I am extremely concerned about a possible increase in traffic traveling through the town of Bethlehem. Trucks and other traffic already pass by the elementary school at very unsafe speeds. Crossing 302, even with a crossing guard, often feels unsafe due to the speed and distractibility of drivers. Adding a large number of trucks to the already busy route could create a dangerous situation for our students. Please take the route through the town of Bethlehem off the table, not only for our students, but also for the safety of our beautiful and thriving community. I am a resident of Bethlehem and have been for over 30 years. Our community is poised for positive growth and is becoming a destination spot. It would be short-sighted of us to make any decisions that would negatively impact this positive growth. To the trucks traveling through town, we are just a route they are traveling. Please do not make a decision that could negatively impact us for years to come. Yeah, that's from Sue Greenlaw, the principal at Bethlehem Elementary. Anybody here in the audience? And in the back.
Hello. I don't like public speaking, so bear with me. My name is Christina, and I live on South Road in Bethlehem. Do you need the number or just the...
Her last name was...
Oh, Zontini. I had a quick clarification question. The number of trucks, maybe this is for you, Chris. I don't understand who approves this or doesn't approve it, or really how it gets stopped. But if it is approved, is there anyone that's can say oh, there's too many trucks, more than they estimated, or is there any oversight of how many trucks are going to be coming in? If you say it's the number that it is, can they just increase that the next year and year over year, or is there any enforcement of that? Or if the town, if it does go through and then we see all these trucks come through and there's a lot of negative impact, can it ever be reversed? Or are we just, once it's open, is it just open for good for truck traffic?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I do not know if there's any enforcement of that. I don't know how they could enforce it. In its documents, Casella says that they somehow encourage their drivers to take the routes that, as they've been described.
Yeah.
But, and I talked to DOT a while ago about it. Despite the fact that they gather an awful lot of information, I don't see anything that indicates that they can actually say which route has to be used.
Okay, got it. So I guess that's a concern and why I'm opposed to it. I think that's opening up a can of worms. And then I am not as eloquent as Ian is with my wording, but I agree with everything he said. I'm a homeowner in Bethlehem, and I'm planning on opening up a business on Main Street, and so I definitely do not want garbage trucks. And also, I agree with a lot of the points with the bike safety. As a biker and a runner, someone who is constantly traveling on roads, I have firsthand experience with what it feels like when a trash truck or like a big hay truck, but especially trash trucks, when they drive past you, it's terrifying. You know, the wind, like even if they're going the speed limit, like the smell alone is bad, but then the wind can practically knock you off your bike if they're going fast enough. I've definitely experienced that, so I'm definitely opposed to it. And one last quick thing, I'm not sure about the increased truck traffic in the road maintenance and if that has a big effect or not, but something to consider for taxpayer money if it's going to eat up our roads faster with large trash trucks coming in and out of town. And also the Long Hill point I think is really important as someone who drives that route a lot. It's scary, so. But that's all. Thank you.
Anybody on Zoom? Any?
I think listed as Bruce Blaney. And she had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry. Bruce Blaney?
Yes, it's Jody Blaney. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I feel like today, those of us that were standing outside and those of us that are in the hall tonight at the meeting, as well as those of us that are on Zoom, I read today a quote by Dan Rather, and he said, "Today we are choosing action, which is the antidote to despair." I feel like the majority of Bethlehem residents are really in despair at the thought of the Casella trucks coming through our main street. As I said earlier, it's so ironic, after 30 years of Casella in Bethlehem, when none of their trucks came through Main Street, that they would be coming through our main street if this proposed Casella landfill goes through in Dalton. And I know the numbers have been thrown out and talked about tonight, but I do feel like the numbers are underestimated. Whatever Casella says, I agree with, I think Catherine spoke earlier, that the number is underestimated. It's always more. One day last week, I personally traveled from the west end of Main Street, starting at Adair, and stopped at every business that I possibly could from there to Bear Mountain Inn. I just counted, I stopped at 26 businesses along our Main Street. I didn't make contact with all of them, and when people were not there or open, I came back later the next day, or I put a little flyer in their door just to remind them about this public input tonight. Because I don't know, with the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, as it is now, I don't know how we can stop Casella from coming through our main street. But I do believe the majority of the residents thinks it's a really bad idea, as I do. And I did make personal contact with a lot of those 26 businesses I stopped at, and there wasn't one that thought it was a good idea. One right in the middle of Main Street, the owner of the business and his residence that's there, he said, "Jody, I'm at ground zero." He said, "One of these days I'm gonna put a chair out in front of my business and just count the trucks that go by now." And he said, to think of adding all of those big trash hauling trucks of Casella going through our Main Street daily, he said it just, I can't remember the word he used, but he said, "I'm at ground zero and it would be disastrous." So I guess I don't want to repeat a lot of what I already wrote to you and what I said the last meeting, but I think it's so important. I so appreciate the ability to give input to you, the selectmen. I know DES has said this isn't their department, the traffic, but we need DOT's attention.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, we're past 3 minutes.
Thank you. So we need DOT's attention and the legislators' attention. And thanks for hearing me. This is a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome.
Folks here in the audience. Anybody on Zoom? Well, thank you all for coming out, for voicing your thoughts. Again, if anybody has any further commentary, please send an email to the board. As we take into consideration.
We've also already